Today I want to start with just a quick exercise. So I have ink pen, I have a graphite pencil, mechanical pencil, and I also have watercolor pencils. I have regular color pencils, lots of colors. And I'm also going to be using a water brush and some watercolors. If you have charcoal pencils, or any other mediums that you want to try out, this would be the great exercise to do it with. So I have lots of different sketch paper, and these are large format. These are 11 by 14. So I'm going to be doing 2 sets of couples per page. But the first one I want to show you is this. In case you're new, I want to show you something that we're going to be using, which is the concept of negative space. So quick question. What do you see here? I want to point to this image that you see up here. The answer would be either a red vase or 2 profile faces. Yeah, you saw one or the other first. So what am I trying to convey here? One of the sketches, and I'm going to use this as a warm-up. You're welcome to do it as well. Let me go ahead and use actually a color pencil for this. So when I draw a subject, I can either draw the edge of the subject as a positive, or I'm also considering the negative space, which would be the space around it or behind it. So one easy way to do this is an exercise like this, where if you draw what you see on screen, and that would be something like this, which is just a profile, ask yourself, what shapes am I looking for? And as I draw my line, how do I decide, in this case, focusing on the profile as my positive? So all of this, and I'm just going to color it in here, would be the negative. And we call that the negative space. But isn't it interesting? You could do it either way, because I could focus on this side, I'm actually going to draw the vase. So I could see it as the edge of the vase, and I want you to really work this exercise. And what happens to the way you see? You have a consideration for how you look at positive or negative space, and you get to trick your brain. And there it is. So what do I want to do today? With a quick, and this is going to be the most, the technique I'm going to be using the most. What I'm going to be doing is looking at a crowd of people. I'm going to select 2 by 2. So these would be the 2 furthest to your left. And what I want to do, and I'm going to do this very quickly as a quick demo with a color pencil. What I want to do is, I'm going to start here with the gentleman, and I want to turn him into the vase. So all I'm looking at is the space around as one quick contour, where you begin to see, and I'm doing this a little too fast. Usually we would take a lot longer and slower. And I'm going to basically draw the air and the space and the edges around my entire subject. So you'll end up with something like this, and you begin to realize, okay, some of these areas go in, and how do I add the detail? So this is just a silhouette, but you can see that I basically did this to this subject. Now, what's interesting is I could also take this as my subject, and the space between him and the girl also becomes negative space. So you see there's a little bit of space, and if I focus on drawing those shapes and switching back and forth from the shape of my subject, in this case her leg, or the space between the negative space, in this case the space between her 2 legs, it could actually help you as a drawing technique to see everything so much easier. And now there's one more concept here. There we go. So you can pretty much, if I were to say, well, can you find these two in a crowd of 20 people? Most likely you would say, oh yeah, I know. Well, this one's definitely holding a bag and she's kind of holding her hair here. We could also put the details, and that's all part of the fun of drawing later on once we begin to add, all the details, all the extra lines. And we're going to do that with 4 different techniques. So if you hear me talk about negative space, positive negative space, that's what I'm talking about. And for our first subject, I'm just going to go ahead and flip this around and start with this first couple here. So this is going to be our first drawing. If you feel you need a little practice, you haven't done this before, I'm going to show you. In my first one, I'm going to use water-soluble. This is a watercolor pencil. So I'm going to use a little bit of what would look like colored pencil, and then I'm going to use a little bit of water to do that. So starting with the proportion, so how big am I going to make this figure? What I do is I generally select a starting position. Let me just select, there we are, which would be at the top of the head. Most of the time it starts at the top of the head. And the next concept that I want you to consider is blind contour. What does blind contour mean? It means I fix my eyes on my reference and I don't look at my paper. And you may say, whoa, 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 how's that even work? The more you look at your reference, and notice that I went to one side and then to the other, the easier it is going for me to, it's going to be easier for me to see all the small little angles, and that's all we're looking for. We're looking for shapes and angles within the subject that are going to give me clues, and most of them are small curves. Generally speaking, they're going to be in an angle, and that's the most important thing. And I also want to make sure that my eyes are following the pace of my hand. So my hand is not going faster than my eyes, and my eyes are going for a walk, basically. They're going for a walk, following a trail, and that trail takes me all the way around the edge. Now there's going to be areas where, I want to go in and just follow this, where I can see other areas and create different shapes. We can do that, but the easiest way is to just go all the way around, creating the silhouette and seeing all the bends, folds, and realizing, wow, it's just small little variations of angles and shapes of lines. And educating yourself to see this is going to allow you to literally draw a crowd of people in just minutes. Now, the biggest thing is trusting what you see. So I also want to mention a clock. So this line that I drew here, is it at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 6 o'clock? And learning how to catch the angles. Well, in this case, is it 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock? That's more like it, because I'm going the opposite direction. And really trusting what you see and delivering that line. Most of them, they're going to try very hard. They're going to tend to be a little more vertical or horizontal, but everything that becomes a diagonal, you want to pay close attention to that angle. And one of the great ways is think of a clock. If you need to stop and check that angle, then you do that. You pace yourself. You begin to also see relationships between, for example, where this ends, does it match with what's happening on the other side here? And it also creates a nice little small negative space shape. So I want to follow it. And finally, the biggest trick, other than slow down as much as you can, look and glue your eyes to your subject, to your reference. The more you look, and yes, you can blink, but the more you look at your reference and the less you look at your paper, the better outcome you're going to have. The more you slow down and maintain a good pace, also the better your drawing is going to be. You give the quality of line a little chance to actually have a nice shape of line. But then one more, close one eye. If you close one eye, you turn your binocular vision into monocular, and somehow you flatten the shapes that you're looking for. So sometimes it helps you see geometric shapes simpler. What used to be a hand, a wrist, an arm, now just becomes a simpler, more vertical line. And one of the biggest things is sometimes you lose proportion. So this may happen to you where, whoops, this shoulder ended up way up in his ear. So keep an eye on proportion and not forcing the meeting point. You can begin to work your way around one way and then the other way without losing your point. So there's my silhouette. There's my guy. Once I go in here, I want to see what would be the next thing I see. Shapes within the shape. So I'm going to look at some of these shapes here, and I'm going to try to connect with some of the markers that I have from earlier lines. And notice that I am not going to add too much detail. I'm just, believe it or not, I am not looking at my paper right now. I'm trying to, I'll take a glance. One quick second, and it's not even a full second, out of every 10. That is a good ratio. If you're looking at your paper longer than 1 second every 10 seconds, then you're not looking at your reference. But if you're looking at your reference and you sync your hand to the lines, then you have a chance to capture very simple, moving around to other areas. And you'll realize that, oh wow, we don't have to overdo details. Just a few lines here and there will actually capture not just the likeness, but the personality, the gesture, the pose. And you're going to want to begin to move faster. So pace yourself. 3 lines, we deliver a hand right here. So you'll realize that your biggest job is going to be editing what goes in, what stays out. And what I mean by that is as details, as lines. So another big tip is when you close your eye, one of them, you begin to see spots that are darker, spots that are sharper. So you also kind of get a sense of light and shadow. And that pretty much is where you want to focus your lines. So I mentioned this was watercolor pencil. I'm going to just go ahead and use a brush, and you'll see what happens here. I could use a little bit of water. And by just touching it to some of these lines, I could actually play with a little bit of the light. I could actually make this look a little more three-dimensional. And this is just one of those techniques that makes your drawing just a little bit more interesting. And the other thing I want to show you today is maybe how to use a little bit of mixed media. So not just mixed watercolor pencil with watercolor, but you could also use maybe some ink lines or color pencil. Once this dries a little bit, you don't want to draw over a wet area. And then the final thing would be maybe to place him in just a little bit of background here. Just a couple lines in the background. And there we have it. So there's sample number 1. Now, if you had time to do 2 subjects here, maybe you're going a little too fast. So this was a good one. And obviously, I wanted to give you the choice of selecting which one. You don't have to follow along. But now I have space to work with the second one. Now, do you have to take longer and, as I'm saying, take your time? No, you can actually work them a little bit faster. So let's go ahead and, I'm going to use color pencil for this one. I'm going to use, let's say, I'm going to have them pre-selected. So I'm going to use this for the hair. I'm going to use this for the clothing. And there we are. So just these 4 colors right here. And I'm going to start directly with color lines, color pencil, using the same technique. So doing it a little bit faster. Not that you should. I want you to really feel that you're finding, most important thing, your pace. Because when you find the pace, and whether you are faster and you like the quality of your lines when they're faster, or you work a little bit slower, pace, finding your pace and how you manage that is going to be absolutely key. So I'm going to be switching from color to color here. That's also something new where you're going to want to, well, how does that work? Do I lose my place? But you notice I'm going a little more gestural, more playful. I'm going directly, not just on the contour, but I'm also going right into the wrinkles of the clothes here. Some of the button areas and just capturing. Actually, this one's way darker, so I'm going to switch this color for this one here. And as I begin to connect, I can also color certain areas. And I'm still using the shapes and the contour along with negative space. Notice that I'm not really concerned about every single bend or detail, just the general shape of the overall hand. And I'll show you close-ups of this so you can see it easier. And what stands out, patterns. The idea is to have fun. And this is a great way to, one day when you're a tourist somewhere and you want to sketch groups of people, this is pretty much how fast you're going to want to capture some of those crowds. If you could do a little bit of color mixing and actually finalize your subject, going right into negative space here, following the contour. Sometimes I go straight into also just the anatomy, the legs. Notice there's a little bend. It may not be perfect, but it kind of captures the pose. And with that, I go back to this color here, and notice that I could just focus on the main features, which is these crossing patterns here, without having to go into every single toe and every single, and I'll just do a squiggle line. So here we are, black and white. We could always come back, as I mentioned, with a little bit of mixed media, add a little bit of color. This was a little bit kind of aqua or lighter green or beige, but just adding a little bit of color to it. There we are, taking your time with it. And a few beige lines right here. You can finish up. And what's our goal? It's to have fun with it. Do you want perfect portraits? Well, it's going to take longer. It's maybe going to take a different technique. But here we are, 2 quick figures. And as we saw, we're using a little bit of mixed media or direct line with color. And I wasn't really coloring. I just, as you saw, followed the contour, did some wrinkles, and created great gestures with simple lines. So next, I have a crowd here. And we do have a little more play, a little room for play here with bags and umbrella and the gentleman here or the ladies in the back with the hat. So this one I'm going to focus a little more on negative space. So I'm going to be using this ink pen. And what does it do? It does the same. It's water soluble ink. So what it's going to allow me to do is I'm going to draw my lines, and if you follow, what I'm going to try to do is do the entire group as one subject. And within it, I'm going to break some of the lines, and I'm going to break some of the gesture so it makes individuals within the group. And then I'm going to play with that. And I'll show you just a quick sample as I start here with the top of the umbrella. So we go all the way to the edge. And what I want is quick. Make sure I follow the line. I'm going to repeat this over and over. If you are looking at your paper more than at the reference, you are making up information, which means it's not going to be as accurate. What we want to do here is notice that there's a bag. If you're following, I go here from umbrella to a shoulder. That's in the back. But I can actually connect this right into the next negative space. I'm jumping way ahead right here. But that shoulder connects to the arm and then to a bag, which is this bag here in the front that belongs to the lady with the umbrella. So all of these, the bag, then connects with the leg. It's a little bit of jean short here with a nice little, kind of like a ballerina shoe. And just adding the marker for that. Looking at negative space, the quality of the line that I can create with that negative space, the space between that leg with jean and the lady's leg here in the front, which is at the edge of the skirt. And then obviously because it's closer to me, it's going to be bigger. Or it's going to compare. It's going to look as if it were bigger because it's closer. Adding a little bit of extra line for the heel. And as we connect with the leg, we have the other shoe. And I'm just really quickly adding features that will separate this, which is in front, from that one, which is in the back. Now, is this hopefully beginning to make sense? If you've never done this before, it's going to take a couple of tries. But again, look at the negative space between that leg in the back and this one here in the front. And obviously, even between these two feet, you want to look at the shape of it and the space between them. No detail. No need for detail. And as it gets more crowded, it could get a little, it may feel a little more chaotic. So once again, you get to add or omit, edit out the things you want in, the things you want out. As an artist, that's what you get to do. Beautiful, interesting negative space between the hip and the skirt of the lady here in the front, and that girl and her skirt right here in the back. And we also have her legs and her hand right in front. So all these it's a bunch of things happening here. There's tons and tons of information that could eventually be really just easy to lose my place. So guess why I'm not losing my place? Because my eyes are fixed, really fixed on all the clues that I could see here on this image. Going back and forth, I can move from one where I see one area and I can pick up on a clue. Meaning where I found just a corner of an area, for example, here with the purse and the skirt and the jacket, I could reconnect, find my negative space, and little by little piece it together all the way to her head. And from here, again, decisions on how much information you feel is necessary. Notice that I'm avoiding any type of hair or facial features. You're going to see how easy I'm going to make that happen and how easy you can do it as well. And luckily, it came close, and now it matches the opposite area where I needed this hand. And again, when I say hand, it's just the shape of the edge. There it is. That's all I need. Now, yes, I'm going a little too fast. When I say pace yourself, you may look at me and go, wow, how's he going so fast? You want to really, really take your time, explore. The whole idea is to really explore the image, have fun with it. Discover all these things that you can see. And only you can decide. And there we are. Just ran into the shoulder of my main character here all the way in the front, which would be this gentleman. And just going to follow it all the way down. Oh, one more thing. Notice how I don't lift my pen. It's one continuous line all the way. And sometimes it could step over things and trace back, and I'm going to be totally fine with it. Now, if you really, really feel like, no, I need to lift and give it a little break, you could lose your place. That's why I don't lift my pen. And if you can really go all the way through with one continuous line, that's what we call the blind continuous contour drawing. And he's holding this bag. And a lot of lines are just descriptive of what I think I see. Because sometimes it's, what do I think I see? And it's the edge of the ear, the top of the hat, the shape of the bend of the other ear, and the profile of the face. But most of the stuff we really get to decide and shape are what makes our drawings interesting. And the more creative you get with those lines, well, I just lifted my pen there. The more creative you get with those marks and those types of lines, the more interesting your drawings. So I mentioned what happens with all these features here. Notice I'm just going to add a few touches of ink. A little line for the mouth, little dot for the nose, and a couple of lines here for the shirt. Go back to here. So there's a whole crowd, and yes, it did take a little bit longer. But you're gonna see how this works out. Remember, the more you get to practice with this method, the better the quality of what you see, number one, and how you register, how you bring it to the paper is going to be. Let's go ahead and finish these. We have a girl here with a couple of leggings and giving us a sort of a pose with these nice shoes, a little bit of a skirt, the vest, and there's the arm coming right across to the other side. Her hair, and I'm just going to add a line, a dot, and a tiny little one for, oh, we gotta bring a few. And there we are. That's as much information I'm going to decide to add for the features of the face. Maybe a little more for the hair, just a touch. And I see this here for her hair. So this is a great drawing. Just going around. Well, we missed one here in the back with the hat. But then what I wanted to do was I could use this line and I could actually create the space by pulling some of the ink and using it to create the space between my subjects here. I could actually bring it into some of their features, like the shoe, like her skirt, which is a little darker. I would bring that in here as well. Her hair. Here's what I do for the features. Just a touch of water. I would probably bring a little bit of color. And just a little extra for under the umbrella. Notice how gestural some of these brush strokes are. I'm not painting. I'm literally just drawing with this brush. But I get to use the contour and the actual ink to fill in areas of my subject, or in this case, we could actually just paint the space around them. So I'm using the edge of the paint, well, the ink, I'm sorry, to create just a little bit of kind of an aura around my subject that is basically coloring the negative space. And I could bring that just a touch in to the subject as well. And just really get playful with it. And look how interesting it gets. So, once again, this technique is water-soluble pen. In my case, I was using a fountain pen. This is a Lamy with the cartridges that just happen to have water-soluble ink. Now, you can use any type of pen. and test it to see if it will give you that water soluble quality. Sometimes some of the cheaper pens actually do the great job with it. So there we have it. We have a nice crowd of people, and this could be the base layer, a quick sketch, maybe add some color to it, but it could be the beginnings of something really, really nice. And again, only 10-15 minutes. So here's one more. So I'm going to use this ink paper. And it holds a little water as well. So I'm still going to be using my my watercolor. And let's go to the next image. So we have this one. And let's see. Yeah, I think this one here. So for this one, what I want to do, and I think this is going to be maybe the final one. Don't want to rush you. But this one, I'm going to use watercolors. So drawing with watercolor. And here's what I want to do. I have a nice little set of watercolors here. And my image is... There we are. So for this gentleman, the lady in the back, and this girl, what I want to do is select my colors. And it's a little trickier. You're going to be tempted to want to use pencil lines. You're welcome to. But what I want to do is literally draw. And I'm going to start with this gentleman here. So I'm going to basically draw the positive space. So I'm starting with the shape of the hair. I'm going to select the lighter color here. And really, really water it down. And notice the negative space here. And I'm going to try to draw with color the overall shape in this case of the shirt. But it's the same process. It's a little, the only difference here, we're going away from line. But although I'm still using the brush as a drawing tool, what I am looking more for are overall shapes. So it's the only difference. You have to consider a little more beyond line, a little more the shape. But as you can see, it's coming together. We can begin to recognize this. I'm going to go a little bit further with this. He's got an object right here in his pocket. And you can always mix. And the idea is not to turn this into a painting. The idea is to draw. And notice, I don't have a water bucket. I just have this very convenient water pen. But if you set yourself up with various brushes and a couple of paper towels, napkins, the idea here would be to maybe even mix a little bit of color. But I'm going to keep this extremely simple. You could almost make it geometric. And the more you consider mixing color, drawing the negative space, the more ideas you're going to have to put the scene together. So from here, I'm going to mix a little bit extra with a little bit of blue and add a little bit of black. And because I'm not just doing line, I want to have enough material And maybe you get a chance to also play with a little bit of technique. So if you love watercolors, this is a great technique to just draw, but also you get to play with traditional techniques that maybe give you some interesting, very casual look that is opposite. I mean, what you want out of watercolors, where watercolor creates something interesting on its own. And again, this is becoming a little more wet than I was hoping, but just adding the shape, basic shape of color here. And then, notice how I'm finishing up very, very basic shapes. So I'm actually not even really looking at the negative space, the full contour. I could do a little bit better. This was more, I would say, yeah, basic geometric shape of the overall. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of color here to the face. And if you were to see this, would you be able to pick this subject out of a crowd of people? That's my idea. So this one's going to get a little more interesting because we have some very cool colors here. And I think I'm going to start with that because we have, see, it would be right about here. And I'm going to put some of this violet and purple. And then space it out. Notice that it's just quick brush strokes. And I'm literally drawing with color. And once you begin to learn more and more how you see and how you manage your sense of color. Actually, this is going to be a little more black. There we are. And a little lighter just for the as you can see, a little bit of a curve. But the whole idea is to find a way to draw. Find a way to see the negative. Combine that with the positive. Identify the shapes. And simplify what you see. I think it's one of the things you really, really want to focus on. How do I simplify the elements? Let me see, how am I going to use this one here? And adding a little bit of blue or gray to it for the sweater. A little bit more of black for the hair. But you see, it literally is about identifying, in this case, a little bit of the color, but the shapes, and putting those shapes in the right positions. Now, when shapes begin to get a little more and more complex, like hair, you want to simplify them. You really want to go back and simplify them once again. And by simplifying, you get to tell the viewer where to focus. And here, for example, we're going to add a little bit of arm. There we are. We have a little bit of color popping right out of there. Let's go for a little bit of skin tone. Gotta clean this, all the blue out of it. And just a touch of it. And just a touch for the lips. And sometimes that's all you need. There's a nice little graphic here. I'm not sure, can't make it out when it's on the shirt here. So identify the shape, simplify it. I think it's a dog. There we are. She's also holding a bag with little floral patterns here. There we are. I'm going to go ahead and work on the last one, which would be the lady here in the background, right behind her. She's got a nice, I'm going to go a little extra yellow. We have the hat. Notice how I'm going to skip over from the face to the neck to her shoulder line. And how you'll be able to recognize. Go through the arms here. We'll leave a little space of white. We have a nice purse. And then all the way down, we continue with the dress. So I'm really drawing big, big areas of color here. And the idea is how close to stick figures, but not stick figures. Creating, I'm going to go ahead and go with this color for the shoes. Notice I'm just doing the shape of where I see a little bit of patterns and leather and a heel. And I'm going to add the fingers just like this. And I'm going to add a touch of red for the bottom of this purse. As a little bit of pink. Adding a little bit of hair. And then, for the facial features, I could step away from the watercolor, go back to color pencils and or pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and add some lips and just a few lines. Notice that, just a quick marker for lips. I'm going to add a little bit of red for her ears. Some of these floral patterns that we have on the dress, I could just tap. I want to see if you can see it a little bit closer from this angle. As you can see, I'm just squiggling marks. And again, it's because I could see them. I'm looking at the reference. they actually kind of come into this one as well. But do you see how the combination of shapes of color and little markers with color pencil, it's a beautiful technique for illustration. Obviously, if you have extra colors, the combination of shape and line now becomes something completely different. Really, really rich. And do I need to go all the way to drawing the edges and everything I didn't do earlier? Well, that would maybe kill the balance. So what you look for here is a balance between color and line where you don't overpower one or the other. There we are. Adding just a few extras. And once again, the idea is, with a quick sketch like this, can we point them out of a crowd? And I think we can. And I cannot wait to see what you did. I hope you guys enjoyed it.